Hi, I'm Robben Ford. Show you a few things about what can be viewed in two different ways. The first two chords of a blues, which would be, for instance, G and C. And so G7, right, if we were playing a blues in G, C would be the next chord, right? Okay, I'm going to focus on the use of those two chords and how to get from this one to that one. I'll show you a couple of ways to do it chordally, and I'll show you a couple of ways to do it using the diminished scale, which seems to loom large in my legend, the half-step, whole-step scale, or the diminished scale, also known as the double diminished scale, because there are two diminished arpeggios in it. So, first of all, I'm going to demonstrate the scale briefly, and then I'm going to show you something I think is very cool that will help you both chordally and scalarly. So the half-step, whole-step scale of half steps and whole steps, right? Half step, whole step, half step. So if we started here, so I would really recommend getting that under your fingers, okay? This way, there's a tendency, to play it, right? It's kind of this way, thumb behind the neck. Play the first four steps of that scale and then go to C, right? You've just exercised the diminished scale getting from G to C. So now a 13 chord. This is the way I initially learned how to play it. I learned it out of the Mickey Baker book, Volume 1. So this is G7 with the 13th degree played here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's G13 right there. And it's being played. I'm using my fingers so that we don't hit that A, right? Can't do that if you're going to play this voicing. So I play this way. So my thumb is dampening the A string. A lot of people aren't comfortable with their thumb back there like that, and especially with chords like this, because that's a handful right there. That's a handful of chords right there. So that's why I kind of have a tendency to demonstrate this thing I'm going to show you here using my fingers. Once again, you should push yourself to do that. If you don't use your fingers, start using your fingers. Just start doing it. You don't have to spend all day doing it. Do it for 10 minutes. Do it for 5 minutes, and try something. So, now that's a really nice little way to get from G to C, right? And that's using the half-step, whole-step scale. So you could play this, and you should also not be afraid to just play the scale. The scale is a musical thing, whether it's the diminished scale or the minor scale, the half-step, the half-diminished, straight major scale. It's a musical thing. Whenever you play anything, it's a musical thing. It's not a thing that's going to allow you to play music. You are going to play music. You're playing music no matter what you're doing, Now, if you notice, in a blues, your third chord is going to be D, right? All of these are seventh chords. So they can all be treated the same way. When you play this scale to C, the diminished scale, when you get to the C chord, is a little bit, if you use that there, it's going to take you to F. It's always going up a fourth. G to C, C would go to F. So the thing is, on this D chord, when you finish out the blues, your last chord, you can use it on the 5 chord exactly the same way. The C chord is just a little bit dicier. It can be done, but don't do it. Just don't think of the C chord as having the same function as the G7 and the D7. The G7 is going up a fourth to C, and that's why it works. It's 1 to 4, but that's also, in the case of D in a blues, it's up a fourth, takes you home to G, right? So D is actually the 5 chord for G. G is the 5 chord for C. Now, I know that might be kind of hard to wrap your mind around, but it's kind of a difficult thing to explain, but if you listen to it, you will hear it. Right? You can't go, because you've just changed keys, right? You've just moved to F. But if you do it in the key of D, it takes you home to G. So whatever you can do on that G chord in the blues, you can do on a D chord in the blues. All the same things. The C chord, not so much. The C chord, you want to stay pretty traditional. Even if you play that C chord, G pentatonic, play it right through all of that. But when you get to that D chord, you can use that diminished thing the same way you did going from G to C. So this diminished thing, again, there's a wealth of things that you can do with it. Now, anything that you do with the diminished scale, you can do in minor thirds, up or back down. You could start here. So you have this one little lick. You can play it there. So you get this hip little thing. I just played that diminished riff. Again, I'm just on the 5 chord of a blues. You finished out the blues. That's the half diminished, half whole tone. So I really encourage that diminished scale thing, man. It's been like I've devoted a lot of my attention to the diminished scale. And I did so because I heard it in Miles Davis's music, and Miles has just been a huge hero to me. And you can play that diminished scale even as just a static chord jam, It's another reason why I like it so much. Generally, we think of altered scales, which this is. We think of it as 5-1. If you play G to C, that's 5 chord to the 1 chord in the key of C. That's why it works. So, I hope you enjoyed the lesson and that you've learned something from it. Thank you very much. Every approach to soloing, generally, if one really thinks about it, you're going to find an influence. You're kind of emulating somebody that you like, You're kind of emulating B.B. King or Albert Collins, and so often for me, I'll just be playing something I have heard before, something that I like. But depending on what you're playing, if it's a shuffle or a slow blues, they're very different things, and the approach is, probably going to be a little bit different just because of the energetic. I like playing slow music. I like having all that space and all that time to develop whatever it is I'm going to play. And so for me, I might play something like that to begin a slow blues. And what I just played is the pentatonic scale. And then I put a little something on the end of it, a little fluff on the end, a little flurry or something. And then if it's going to the 4 chord, I would play something very akin to that. So I've just done, what do you call it, sort of like variation on a theme, or even more, it's like there's a couple of things that are talked about in classical music and compositions. Diminution is like when you lessen the space between notes, and I don't know what the other one is. The opposite of diminution, expansion or something like that. So you expand the space between the notes. So you're playing in sort of a thematic way. You're not just playing licks. You're composing. You think like a composer. So that's one thing I would do. So again, I'm playing the pentatonic scale because we just went to the A chord. So very nice way to have evolution. Immediately there's an evolution in what you're playing. You're not just playing blues licks. And the pentatonic scale, so I just added the 5th degree. If you approach the pentatonic scale as a musical device, and this is something that I think it kind of falls under the category of thinking like a musician. You're not thinking like a guitar player. You're not thinking like a blues guitar player even. You're thinking like a musician. So you should be viewing the pentatonic scale as a musical device. And not only is it a device, it's beautiful unto itself. And I think people are afraid to just play the pentatonic scale, or afraid to play the major scale or the minor scale, thinking they're supposed to be doing something else with it. Another thing is like double stops. Okay, so I just played, all I did was play 3 inversions of the same, of an E chord. Pentatonic scale. Literally, the pentatonic scale, That's like kind of John Lee Hooker. So. I do that a lot. I let the time expand a little bit. za da 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 dum instead of da 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 dum, right? Pentatonic scale. Three, four. Nothing but pentatonic notes, but I pronounced the A note when it went to the 4 chord, you know? All pentatonic. This would be like an 8-bar blues. Country blues and then a jazz chord, right? That's sort of like the story of my life.